Thanks, guys. It's an absolute delight to be here. As some of you know, I've been in New York for, 15 years now, but I spent my formative years right here in Boston. I spent many a wonderful year at Arnold Advertising, and I have many fond memories. And I'm still a rabid Boston Red Sox fan and Patriots fan, so fear not. What I'm going to be talking about today is the importance of making an emotional connection when you're building a brand in the health and wellness space. And we kind of all take that for granted when we're talking about consumer brands. But for some reason in the health and wellness space, there's still this lingering misperception that you need to focus more on a rational or a functional benefit when you're building a brand. So I'm going to try to disabuse you of that notion today. So with that, I thought we'd start with a little pop quiz. What percentage of our decision making do you think happens in the rational part of your brain? Think about all of the decisions you make in a given day or week or month. What percent do you think takes place in the rational part of your brain? Any ideas? How many of you say 5%? Raise your hands. Okay, how about 45%? All right. 75? All right, so kind of evenly split between 45 and 5. 5% is the right answer. Now, I don't know about you, but explains a lot of my behavior. But it's kind of shocking, right? Only 5% of our decisions take place in the rational part of our brain. And it's because of that it's so important when you're building a brand that you don't rely only on the functional benefits. You've got to really ladder it up to an emotional benefit as well. And it's that combination of, if you think of the vertical axis as being your rational appeal and the horizontal axis being your emotional appeal, you really need a little bit of both to build the most powerful, differentiated brand. At Saatchi, we call that a love mark. It's just a funny word for a brand that has both emotional and rational appeal. And I mean, it's important for any brand, right? But especially in the health and wellness space, because think about it, in a world of generics and Me Too brands, your competitors can oftentimes match you on those functional, rational benefits. So it's so important to also differentiate yourself in an emotional way and get to that sweet spot in that upper right-hand quadrant. And the other reason it's so important is because the only way we're going to motivate people to take action and do something is if we make them feel something at an emotional level. So it's important for that reason too. And think about it, there's probably no category people are more passionate about than our health and wellness. So it's very, very important. But why should you believe me? You should believe me because there's a lot of rigorous science behind it that makes a very strong case as to why that emotional connection is so important. We're going to take a closer look at some of that. So a little anatomy lesson. If you look at how our brains evolved over time, if you look at the number one, the reptilian complex, that was where it all started. And that part of our brain is the very oldest part of our brain, and that's where things like our instincts reside, and all of those automatic responses like breathing and also the fight or flight mechanism, all those kind of unconscious responses. So that's in the reptilian brain. The next part that evolved was what's called the limbic system, or it's also referred to as the mammalian brain. And that's where things like feelings and memories, all of our emotions reside in that part of a brain, and mostly subconscious. It wasn't until relatively recently that the neocortex formed, and that's the newest part of our brain, and that's where all of the conscious thought takes place. So that's where all of our analytical thought takes place, and also where our ability to plan forward, logic, language, all of our reasoning, that's all happening in that new part of our brain. So you probably would like to think that most of our decisions are happening, right, in that logical, reasoning part of our brain. But we know that's not the case. It's actually happening in the older part of our brain that's comprised of the first two sections. So if you had to choose which part of our brain is governing the bulk of our decision making and the bulk of our behavior, it's that old part of our brain, otherwise referred to as our emotional brain. So, why is that so important, or why should we even believe that? Well, there are a ton of studies that have been done in a lot of different disciplines, everything from neuroscience to neuromarketing, and all of them really say the same thing. Lots of studies, but the same point. If you look at the one in the middle, 95% of our thinking takes place in our unconscious minds. We use conscious thought primarily to rationalize our behavior. Or more simply, we buy based on emotion while justifying with facts. So think about that term, rationalize. That's exactly what it means. We're making a decision based on our emotions, but then we have to quickly come up with some reason so that we can explain our behavior and explain why we made the decision that we made. So, next time you do something that you regret, you have an excuse now, right? Oh, that was my old brain. Just blame it on my old brain. That wasn't really me doing that. And the interesting thing is, we like to think that, maybe healthcare professionals, physicians are exempt from this. They're not. Everybody does this. We're all human beings. We're all at the mercy of that emotional brain of ours. And just a couple of examples. This was actually overheard in a focus group composed of oncologists. And one of them was being very candid, and he says, we're notorious for saying we don't have enough data to support that whenever we don't want to do something. And then when we want to do something, even if we don't have good data, we extrapolate from other studies and say, well, this situation is something like that, so we just extrapolate to justify what we want to do. And the other oncologist kind of smiled and nodded in agreement. So, even our physicians are making decisions based on emotions. And another example, this woman, Danielle Ofri, she's a physician herself. She wrote this wonderful book called What Doctors Feel, and it's full of anecdotes like this. But, even she says the emotional layers in medicine far more nuanced and pervasive than we may like to believe. In fact, they can often be the dominant players in decision-making, overshadowing evidence-based medicine, clinical algorithms, quality control measures, even medical experience. And this can occur without anyone's conscious awareness. So think about that. They're making decisions based, in a lot of cases on emotion, but they're not even fully aware that they're doing it. So that just shows you, the profound level that this is all taking place at. Another thing, we kind of have it beaten into us starting at a very young age that more information is better, right? You know how when you're faced with a really important decision, you make your little plus and minus column and you list all the rational reasons. Well, this is why I should do it. These are all the good things. These are all the negatives. And you think you're making a rational decision, but you're not. And in fact, it's probably good that you're not using all those lists of pluses and minuses, because there's a lot of research that's been done that shows more data isn't necessarily going to lead you to a better decision. And here's a wonderful example from Malcolm Gladwell. He wrote this in his book, Blink. And he's talking about a big public hospital in Chicago that sees a lot of people who come in with chest pain, and they want to know whether or not they're having a heart attack. And the physicians used to take a ton of data, their medical history, their age, their weight, and all these other tests. And they decided to try something, and the doctors were told, stop doing that. We just want you to take 2 data points. Just look at the patient's blood pressure and their EKG. And what happened? Their ability to diagnose accurate heart attacks actually went up exponentially, and today they're one of the best places in the country for diagnosing chest pain. So one of many examples of where, more information, more data isn't necessarily a good thing. Sometimes your gut feeling, your emotional decision is the right way to go. So that was just a lot of theory, but you're probably saying, well, that's kind of interesting, but now what do I do with all that, right? So about a little practical application, how we can put some of this to work. So when you're working on a brand in the health and wellness space and you're looking at the marketing communications, some tips and techniques for putting some of this to work. So one way you can put it to work is by understanding there are different ways we can motivate that emotional old part of our brain. And the first way is the old brain loves comparisons. It loves contrast. So that's a little trick if you want to intrigue the emotional part of the brain. Use comparisons. Another thing, facial cues. You know, back when we were still evolving, it was really important to be able to read facial cues to figure out, you know, whether the other person posed a threat. And even today we do that, right? You look at someone like, what are you giving me that look for? We do the same thing when we're trying to pick up on nonverbal cues. So it's another really great way to intrigue people about your brand. Storytelling. We hear this a lot these days, right? The importance of telling a good story when you're trying to create an experience around a brand. And the reason is that when you tell a story, you're actually activating all 5 senses, and a person's able to really put themselves into that experience and feel it. That's why storytelling is so powerful. So another good trick. Visuals. You see this more than ever today. You see a post on social media when it's just text, and then you contrast that with something that's a photo or a video. Visuals are so much more powerful in terms of getting people's attention and engaging them and making them want to share it. So visuals are another great way to stimulate that old emotional part of the brain, because our mirror neurons actually allow us to put ourselves into whatever is being depicted in that visual or that video. So another good technique. Simplicity is really, really important. You know, you hear this all the time, but the old brain, that emotional brain, actually shuts down if it's overpowered by too much information. So another good thing to keep in mind. Memories. Think about, you know, the ads you see where you see, you know, Christmas morning being depicted, or breakfast at the table with your family, and things that conjure up wonderful memories. It's a really powerful way to form powerful associations with your, between your audience and your brand. This idea of making it personal, this is really interesting, because our old part of our brain, it was designed to keep us safe, to keep you personally safe. So when it sees something, it's trying to figure out, are you a friend or a foe? You know, am I part of your tribe or not? And so it's really designed to keep you safe and to pick up on those little cues. So anything you can do to make an experience or communications feel personal is going to work much harder for you. Avoid the expected. Anything that's surprising or novelty is going to intrigue that old emotional part of our brain. So that's another good trick. And finally, evoke emotion. I mean, this seems kind of basic, but the reason that works so well is because it actually makes our memories stronger. So there's kind of a feedback between the leverage memories and the evoking emotions. They work together to really form a powerful bond. Another way you can use the science of emotion to help you build a strong brand, it helps you figure out different emotions you can leverage in order to trigger specific behaviors. This is especially important in social media. So happiness really creates a desire for people to share. Think about the things you guys see on, you know, Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. You're more likely to share something if it makes you happy, because you want to spread that happiness to your friends and family. Sadness makes people empathize and connect with others, and you see that, you know, after the tragedy in Orlando, you see a lot of people posting things, and you can just sense people are being galvanized around this, so it really, you know, forms a powerful connection. Similarly, fear and surprise, it really prompts you to want to connect with other people. And anger and disgust make you dig in your heels and really become more stubborn. You see that a lot. I'm sure you all have friends who post provocative things, and you see the result that has on social media. The last thing I want to do is show you some examples of ads that have used some of these triggers and techniques, and give you an idea of how this plays out in real life. So the first ad I want to show you did everything a successful ad is supposed to do. It got tons of impressions, it changed people's behavior, sales went up, lots of views on YouTube, and a ton of buzz.
Hello, ladies. Look at your man. Now back to me. Now back at your man. Now back to me. Sadly, he isn't me. But if he stopped using lady-scented body wash and switched to Old Spice, he could smell like he's me. Look down. Back up. Where are you? You're on a boat with the man your man could smell like. What's in your hand? Back at me. I have it. It's an oyster with 2 tickets to that thing you love. Look again. The tickets are now diamond. Anything is possible when your man smells like Old Spice and not a lady. I'm on a horse.
What the hell just happened there? So what do you think made it so successful? And I'm not looking for this answer, okay? Because in addition to that stunning actor. Okay, in the interest of time, it's something called pattern interrupts, and that's just a fancy word for something that surprised you, something that was perceived as novel by that old emotional part of your brain. It's because we are so used to patterns that when we see something that blows a pattern up, we really sit up and take notice. Our brain releases dopamine, which is that feel-good chemical, and you want more. It makes us very happy, and you pay attention, and that's why such a great technique. It also happened to be a good story, a little wacky, but a good story. There were visual, it was very visual, facial cues, so it had a lot of things going for it. Just a sidebar, how do you think a focus group would have reacted to that? And it's because they would have been struggling to try to rationalize why that was a good ad. They wouldn't be able to, and so it's just easier to dismiss it. And that's why usually disruptive, provocative ideas get killed in research, and that's why it's so dangerous to go by what people tell you in those settings. I promised Kathy I wouldn't show all ads like that one, that I would try to bring it home. So let me show you a couple in the wellness space. This first one was for New York Presbyterian Hospital. You may have seen this.
It seemed very similar to when a flash bulb goes off in your eyes and you're just stunned. And I thought to myself, that's not right. I could be the luckiest person in the world. The first ambulance that came was New York Presbyterian. So I remember when I woke up and I realized, okay, well, I am alive. I'm still the same, I sound the same, I still have I feel the same personality. I don't pronounce some words correctly. I just feel like you just stop and you look at the small things. I've seen that same cherry blossom tree in Central Park many times over, but now you stop and you really see it. Everybody at the hospital, Dr. Stieg, his staff, the cute residents, and life is good. And they made it even longer and better for me.
Okay, I mean, clearly it's an emotional ad, but it used storytelling. It's not your typical testimonial, right? She was telling a story. It was unscripted, very personal, very visual, and a ton of compassion. Very different ad for a different hospital. Uses emotion, but in a completely different way, so I wanted to show you this one.
What brings us here? To this place with the coldest winters and hottest summers? We don't come here to retire. We come here to live, to be challenged, to be inspired. This is a city that demands fresh thinking and duly rewards it. If you can make it here, well, you know what they say. We New Yorkers, we're always pushing ourselves to be better. No wonder this city gives us the best of everything. You don't have to look far to see it. It's all around us. The best food, the best music, the best medical care, the best train station. At NYU Langone, we're collaborating on every level to be the best we can be for New Yorkers and for everyone who seeks our care. After all, we're New Yorkers too.
Do you remember that thing about making it personal so that they feel whether you're part of the tribe or not. That's exactly what this one did. They were appealing to New Yorkers' feeling of uniqueness and really trying to make them feel part of the tribe. I've got a couple more, but I'm out of time here, so let me. Go ahead. Is it okay? All right. This one's for pet health. It's a product for fleas and ticks, and it's for NexGard. Let me show you this one.
Protecting your dog from the dangers of pests like fleas and ticks is an act of love. So why does it feel more like misery than amore, both for the dog and the owner? Forcing a pill down your dog's throat or chasing him down to administer liquid on his back feels more like punishment than pleasure. Until now. Because now, there's a new tasty chew that dogs, well, adore. NexGard. It protects your dog from fleas and ticks, and it's a treat to give. So we developed an integrated campaign around just that, showing how dogs can't get enough of its delicious taste. We had dogs sniffing it out on TV, jumping up for it in banners, begging for it in print, and literally licking it off the screen of the website. In all, the campaign changed owners' attitudes towards protecting their dogs. Not surprisingly, sales skyrocketed for the chew, shooting 50% above the launch goal. So much so that the product sold out in the first 2 months, prompting demand for a new factory to produce it, and making NexGard the most successful launch for an animal health product in the United States ever. Proving that protection doesn't have to be a punishment, but a pleasure. Not a treatment, but a treat. Not a pain in the neck, but an act of love.
So clearly used, tapped into that emotion that people have for their pets, but also that surprise factor. On the web we had the dog coming right at the screen, looked like he was licking the screen. And this last one was a disease awareness campaign for a prescription fish oil drug that was to treat ultra-high triglycerides. So they were doing this in conjunction with the branded effort. It was by Astrazeneca, and this was an award-winning campaign that they did.
Face it, we all love tasty food and cold beer. But when that love gets out of control, it takes a true friend to snap you out of it. Meet Marty and Sal, a couple of spokesfish with big ambitions.
Scorsese called me.
Is that right?
Yep. Wants me to be in his next film.
When's that filming?
In 6 months.
Yeah. Don't think you're gonna be available.
But their biggest ambition, helping AstraZeneca tell the world about lowering triglycerides, something two heart-healthy fish know a lot about.
Triglibabab? Triglyceride.
Who are you talking to?
Marty and Sal were talking to men with a history of unhealthy habits. So for them, we created an integrated campaign designed to educate and change behavior. Through our Take It From a Fish site, people could learn more about lowering their triglycerides with videos, eating, and exercise tips.
Did you know a healthy diet with less sugar can be a great way to help lower them?
Yeah, I told you that.
But guys who love beer and hot dogs don't always listen. So we reached out to their loved ones for added support. We targeted their wives on Pinterest with recipes and eye-opening health tips designed to put their husbands on the right track.
That's a good woman right there.
She seems a little naggy to me.
For their grown-up kids, we started healthy eating conversations on Twitter.
You ever been in love, Sal?
We're not that close.
And the best part is, it worked. We became one of the top 5 brand Twitter health campaigns ever. YouTube completion rates were 100% above the category average. In the end, we gave some unhealthy guys some useful information and encouraged them to change some of their old lifestyle habits.
If they're committed to eating healthier, then I'd be willing to sacrifice myself for their greater good.
Very big of you, Marty.
After all, isn't that what friendship is all about?
Not good.
Nope, not at all.
So clearly, tapping into humor, which you don't always associate in the health and wellness space, but it was a very successful campaign. And sorry, I lied. There's one more. This one is for a prescription patch for Alzheimer's disease. And it was just a beautifully done print campaign, very visual, very personal, very simple. And it just shows, the person suffering from Alzheimer's looking at a reflection of their younger self, and just very, very powerful. But again, using some of those triggers and techniques that the science of emotion teaches us work. So I apologize for running over, but I hope I hope I've shared some helpful information about how you can use emotional connections to motivate people to live healthier and happier lives. Thank you.